For about a month and a half now, there has been an ongoing debate in the Fedora forums regarding where they should stand with AI. This is a giant topic. There is a lot of discussion here. The discussion is still going. So let's see what we can do here and try to get a general understanding of what is going on. This is being cut into video after everything else has been recorded. There was the announcement of Fedora Hummingbird Linux. This is a separate endeavor from what is being discussed in this thread. This is something being directly supported by Red Hat. The idea in this thread is for a community-driven Fedora thing. Anyway, back to the main video. All of this was started with the Fedora AI Developer Desktop Objective. The Fedora AI Desktop Initiative aims to build a thriving community around AI technologies by focusing on 3 key areas: equipping developers with necessary platforms, libraries, and frameworks, ensuring users experience painless deployment and usage of AI applications, and establishing a space to showcase the work being done on Fedora, connecting developers with a wider audience. Whilst this initial write-up is going to look quite well formatted, it's going to look like a change proposal, this at the time was not an accepted change, was not a change proposal. This was just trying to get the ball rolling on discussion. It's just the author here tends to write in a relatively formal way. And if you're going to have to make a change proposal anyway, you might as well just make one at this stage. As for the non-goals, privacy will be kept in mind. This is not trying to do like a mass data collection thing, trying to deploy tools that automatically start collecting keystrokes. Tools and applications included in the AI desktop will not be pre-configured to connect to remote AI services. The tools will be there, but the user has to go and configure them, and AI tools will not be added to Fedora's existing system images, additions, etc. by the AI desktop initiative. So at least at this stage, it was a discussion about a separate version of Fedora that is AI focused. That part by itself probably alleviates some of the concern you have. Now, people would still say, oh, if they're doing it in this one version, is that eventually going to creep into the others, with this sort of being a testing ground to see how it works? That is unclear. Nothing has actually been deployed yet. Here are the current AI-related issues with Fedora, as defined by the author of this thread. Complex initial setup turns away prospective users. Basically, it's complicated to get these tools working, and the author here wants to provide something that is more streamlined and more set up out of the box. Technical. Fedora provides a stable release for most software, but provides a rolling release kernel. For mature hardware that requires minimal testing, that's fine. But the AI space is one example of the challenges of working with rolling release software. Both out-of-tree kernel software and user space components can be impacted by the changes typical of a kernel minor release. This is more of a general, widespread Fedora problem. Fedora doesn't have the same level of tooling as something like a SUSE when it comes to dealing with external kernel modules. This is something they know about and they are working on. It's just a complicated problem. But that doesn't really work for the atomic systems like Silverblue, or things that are built on Silverblue which are not part of the Fedora project, like Bazite. The post-install build system is also challenging for atomic systems, and at odds with the fundamental motivation for those systems. For the security-minded, the status quo supports secure boot only through the use of a local signing key, which offers only the illusion of security, since malware can use the officially supported module install infrastructure to install itself. There are logistical problems. Many applications lack guides for Fedora. This is again, general problem which does certainly exist. It's gotten better over the years, but Debian and Ubuntu in many cases are still considered to be the default for documentation. In part because the fact the OS requires configuration that varies from hardware vendor to vendor means that concerns cannot be effectively separated. Application vendors cannot take for granted a working operating system. They may see the need for documentation that varies across distributions and further across hardware vendors, and choose to focus on the systems that require the least variation in the configuration before the user reaches the point of being able to install and use their application. Then there are legal and policy problems. Fedora is dedicated to free and open source software. We build and distribute software that users are free to modify to suit their needs and and to share with others. While Fedora can't deliver non-free software directly, this is why you have to do the whole RPM fusion stuff for the proprietary NVIDIA drivers, we can build relationships with developers who want to provide users with complete systems that include their software. Those partnerships can expand the community to include users and developers who rely on low-level APIs that are not free software. All of that's fine, but what is planned to actually be made here? So these are the deliverables. Feel free to read all of them one by one, but basically what's being done is an LTS kernel, a signed outer tree NVIDIA module, at least until the Nova drivers are ready, an AI atomic spin, a variant with CUDA support because NVIDIA, obviously with AMD, the ROCm stack is more open, so that's far less of a problem. The inclusion of user-friendly tools common to various AI backends such as Goose CLI and Podman Desktop. This is actually I believe they don't even have Podman Desktop package to begin with, so probably a good step. AI-related tooling documentation and a space, not really clear exactly what's being said here, some sort of area to showcase work being done by these developers making use of AI, along with optimized container images for machine learning applications aimed at AI developers. The time frame for this, deliverables 1 through 5 in Fedora 45, 6 through 7 in Fedora 46, and by Fedora 47, everything, assuming this actually does happen, would be done. Now let's jump down a bit to the response from Mr. Neil Gumper. I'm somewhat skeptical of the validity of this objective as a distinct artifact separate from our existing deliverables. AI developer in itself isn't useful unless it's clarified with a target subtype. There are other decompositions that are important. Are we talking about input refinement, data collection, training synthesis, etc., or outcome-oriented, model synthesis, RAG, etc.? These are completely different. Basically, are you focusing on people who are making AI tools or people who are using AI tools? Regarding the LTS kernel, I don't think this is a useful change. Firstly, LTS kernels are almost exclusively used for development of components that aren't integrated or supported upstream in any meaningful way. Not to mention the complexity of supporting alternative kernels in Fedora software and update infrastructure is significant. And finally, it screws over our ability to coherently identify hardware support. Regarding the NVIDIA stuff, I should note that this doesn't require one either. One was the LTS kernel. The OpenRM module works just fine with the latest kernel code. There are much more significant problems with kernel module packages, KMPs. The KMP infrastructure in Fedora is in a very bad shape relative to other RPM distributions ever since we abandoned KMods 20 years ago. We don't have tooling to do automatic rebuilds to chain KMPs to new kernel updates. As a point of comparison, the SUSE people of this much better worked out. Also, I don't think it's a good idea for us to provide a driver that is effectively useless out of the box. We're not distributing the required user space component ourselves, and nobody bothered to hook up Mesa to OpenRM on Linux. That's not to say this stuff shouldn't be fixed. I think it should for the various community-developed outer tree kernel modules that do work with open source stacks. Finally, there is another issue. Changing our policy to support and endorse outer tree kmods in Fedora as KMPs. The likelihood our user systems will be considered tainted meaning you have licenses mixed together that shouldn't be mixed together, and ineligible for support from upstream kernel developers goes up significantly. Kernel developers prefer Fedora and Fedora users over others because of the existing state of things. Fedora runs a really clean kernel, and that makes it a good place to go and do testing. Regarding the variant with CUDA support, are we equating AI equals CUDA now? Because I think generally Fedora and Fedora-affiliated initiatives should not do that. I understand what he's saying here, but this is saying there is the main version, which would be all of the open stuff, all of that good stuff, and then a separate version, which would be the CUDA version. Now, he disagrees on the fact that it should be atomic in the first place, and if it's not atomic, then you wouldn't have to have a variant, but assuming it would be, you would have to have one just because of the way atomic stuff works. Regarding the creation of guides and various other material, I have mixed feelings about this. A downside of this is that we're not teaching people how to own their computing experience and have local ownership of their system. We're also reinforcing opinionated setups over adaptable ones. An appliance workstation environment feels antithetical to me, but I know there's a lot of people really wanting this, so sure. He feels like this makes more sense as a remix, as a additional spin, rather than being like a mainline Fedora thing. But I think a lot of Neil's arguments sort of stem back to this. One of the problems Fedora has right now is that its primary sponsor and major employer of kernel hackers, that being Red Hat, does not generally allocate their contributors to participate in Fedora. They don't review Fedora bugs, they don't assist users, they don't help much with the Fedora kernel in general. It is telling that Ark and the kernel package actually define Fedora as the special case, rather than RHEL being the special case as the subset downstream. Basically, any additional changes like more stable kernels and things like that would be a lot of additional work, and it doesn't seem like Fedora has the manpower just to allocate to this task. As a counterpoint, Btrfs in Fedora is well supported because the Btrfs SIG has upstream Btrfs developers as part of the team and actively does work on that. When reports come in, they are triaged and responded to either within Fedora or upstream. The fact that we ship the latest stable kernels means that those fixes are delivered quickly too, but this is not the norm. Before we start talking about adding kernels, we need people to care about the stuff people report now. From another Fedora packager, I am questioning the staffing level needed to support this, and if anyone will be assigned to it, / if there are enough volunteers. The way we currently maintain and test kernels is not ideal, and while LTS will sidestep some of the issues, it also introduces others. Is there a cross-distribution interest in supporting LTS kernels on the desktop as opposed to on servers, on Android, etc.? Perhaps a joint effort to qualify a given kernel plus some of the low-level user space components, Mesa, etc. could help separate from this. So if this was done, it would make a lot more sense if a bunch of distros came together and said, okay, this is how we're gonna support things. Basically, a cross-desktop initiative, and that wouldn't just be beneficial in a case like this. As a way to build a stable development platform, that also helps with general applications. Wearing my I work in a company that has an ongoing effort to offer Linux as a desktop choice hat, yes, the hardware aggressions on new kernels is annoying, especially since we already buy ThinkPads, but this leads back to the previous question. Maybe hardware qualification should be a joint effort, as clearly even being on the leading edge by the time we test and find issues, it's way too late. As for the messaging around AI, those who know me know I'm very conflicted on this, so I don't really want to contribute to that discussion. Whilst they might not want to contribute, that does become a major part of the discourse. Jumping ahead, we have a member of the Fedora Engineering Steering Committee. This was a major part of the discourse, and this leads to the Fedora project leader also getting involved in the thread. Fedora is already being perceived as tainted by AI due to at least one other council decision, the AI contribution policy, and by its close association with Red Hat. Red Hat is very much involved in AI. They're getting a lot of their engineers to work with AI, even if some of them don't really want to. It's something really being pushed at the company, which is driving users and contributors away to distributions which are perceived as not drinking the AI Kool-Aid, whether deserved or not. I fear that making anything AI in its title an official objective would further alienate users and contributors like this and further damage project reputation. I am not necessarily opposed to some of the technical work that you outline. Making AK mods, K mods work better, or making them obsolete would be great. This is just generally a good change. An LTS kernel might be interesting, better hardware support, always good. All of the technical stuff that is relevant to other things, great. However, while I agree with some of the steps, I certainly wouldn't agree with the goal here. On the other hand, reading your proposal, I was also wondering, why is this not a CentOS SIG instead? It sounds as if that might be a much better fit, stable kernel, SIG support for building kernel modules, etc. Some of the technical puzzle pieces could get developed in Fedora first, but shipping the spin as CentOS SIG deliverables instead would sidestep many problems and provide some philosophical distance between one more AI effort and the Fedora project. This is a discussion which is coming up in a lot of FOSS projects. There are quite a number of people which are not a fan of AI, whether it be for the, stolen work, which is a valid argument, whether it be for license mixing, which I think is a far more critical problem that nobody wants to take seriously, there is a lot of discourse happening in the FOSS space about what do we do here? Because I think people are starting to realize you can't just ignore the problem. You can't just pretend like AI doesn't exist anymore and it's just going to go away. So you have to do something, whether it be in favor or against it, something. For some reason, the author of the thread decided to cite the open source definition, number 6, no discrimination against fields of endeavor. I think that one of the clearly evidenced foundations of the free software / open source ideology is that we are free to work on the things that we are interested in working on, and we are not free to stop other people from working on the things that they are interested in working on. Absolutely true, but that isn't really relevant to should this be merged into Fedora. If you want to do your own thing, if you want to, make your own custom spin, all that stuff, absolutely you're free to do so. But you're allowed to say, I don't want these changes within my project. This kind of derailed the discussion for a bit, and I don't really think is really relevant to the main discourse, so let's just jump past it. And now we have the Fedora project leader. Remember, Matthew Miller stepped down maybe 2 or so years ago now? Maybe it's not that long. It feels like it's been that long. And now we have Jeff Spalletta. Jeff Spalletta? Spalletta. I'm going to trust you AI over you. Spalletta. Okay, that's what we'll go with. And he is responding from that earlier comment from Fabio. I have zero evidence in front of me that users are being driven away from Fedora because of AI. If you want to bring that language into discussion, please show me the metrics. I'm looking around in the distribution space, and I'm not seeing distributions being punished by providing a coherent AI developer desktop environment. We have to take care in how we as a project use AI, yes, but providing AI desktop to AI developers, the only controversial part of that is the NVIDIA hardware enablement. Now, to be entirely fair, I can't really think of another notable project that has an AI desktop, so is that a fair comparison? I'll let you decide. Regarding the CentOS stuff, I strongly disagree. Fedora is supposed to be out in front in the conversations, even the controversial things. That's something they've definitely done before, talked about it before. They adopted Wayland before it was ready for anyone. Lots of changes like that. Fedora has a history of doing this. We aren't going to have influence in the conversation if we aren't in them. Basically, we need to get involved with this if we want to have an opinion. What we are talking about here is a desktop environment aimed at developers. That is well within the scope of Fedora's target use case. In fact, it's probably Fedora's primary use case. The only technically interesting part of this is the NVIDIA hardware enablement, which may end up being a remix regardless of user focus. Gaining philosophical distance in the space of developer desktops is how Fedora becomes irrelevant because, like it or not, the people starting their software development journey right now are using these tools. As I've said before, I have friends in development education. All of them are saying the students are using AI in some capacity. Is that a good thing? I would argue from the very start, probably not. But it is being done. You're worried about turning away existing contributors because we are making a space for new outputs. I'm desperately worried about being compelling enough to attract the type of person I was when I committed myself to contributing my volunteer time to this project 20 plus years ago. I keep asking myself, if I were 20 years old again, right now in this moment, and I was going to pick a Linux desktop as my daily driver, would I pick Fedora? Would having an AI desktop offering to try inside Fedora matter? I can't honestly say it would not. There are two very different perspectives being made here. One is, a lot of the existing people in Fedora are not a fan of AI. A lot of people in FOSS right now are not a fan of AI and would like to have as little of this as possible. And that's great. I'm mostly on that side. Jeff is looking towards the future though, and looking at what young, new developers are doing now. A lot of them don't have this same opinion on AI. A lot of them are really heavily using this. No, I don't mean as like vibe coding nonsense where you just don't know anything about the code, but actually using it as part of their engineering workflow. And Jeff is basically saying, this is the direction things are going, and we shouldn't turn away from this direction. I'm going to put my Fedora project leader hat on real tight for this next comment. I'm not here to sidestep problems, I'm here to lean into them and get to a better future. I think some people are generally concerned about the ethical use of AI and are loudly pushing back on a future they feel is coming for them that is outside of their control. Saying no to everything AI related in the places where they have agency to do so feels like a way to take a stand and take back control. I think that's exactly the wrong thing to do. You might be able to tell why there's quite a bit of feedback on this thread. I am genuinely concerned about the ethical use of AI. I am genuinely concerned about the hype bubble, but I don't think this technology goes away after the bubble bursts. The best possible future I can see involves the Fedora community being part of the conversation around the ethical use of this technology, and that doesn't mean we sit on the sidelines and ask downstreams to do the work we refuse to do to provide a developer-oriented desktop experience because we can't bring ourselves to do it. Punting onto developers is how this project becomes irrelevant, and it's definitely not in line with the support and text of the first foundation, nor in line with what I understand Fedora's core mission to be. The people who are going to get us to the better AI future are the people at the start of their journey and see value in the technology, and Fedora needs to be influencing those people so they take technology into an ethical direction that is most congruent with our shared ideals. Effectively, Fedora isn't going to be led forever by the greybeards or the soon-to-be greybeards. There is a new generation coming up, and those people need to be given a ethical framework to work with AI. The skeptics among us, myself included, aren't the people with the ability to drag the best future out of the darkness. We, at best, are safeguarding the past and the present from the worst possible future, but that's not enough. We have to make a space to be in the conversation with the people who can get us to the best possible future. We have to give those people a chance to build and fail and build again, dragging the best achievable future forward. One of the least risky ways we do that is by providing a space to build a self-sustaining developer desktop experience that they can contribute to inside the bounds of our project space, and that puts us in the conversation with the people who see the value where we can't, and we can get to make progress towards the best possible future available to all of us. I fully understand that this response is ruffling a lot of feathers. I don't think that Jeff is entirely wrong here. I think Jeff is looking towards, where is Fedora going to be? Do we want to be Slackware? Slackware is still around, right? Slackware is going to be around forever. But Slackware lost a lot of that market notoriety it had early on. Where do you want Fedora to be? What do you want Fedora's future to look like? Do you want it to still be a powerhouse like it is today? As the Fedora project leader, I am absolutely not concerned about the reputational damage to this project that comes with setting up an entirely new output attractive to developers who want to make use of AI tools. Again, this is not replacing the existing version. This is not, oh, Fedora KDE, Fedora Workstation, these are going to be AI systems. This is an additional thing. That's what he's saying he's not concerned about. People who find that to be a problem. If this were proposing reorientating Workstation, which is a mature project output, I would be pushing back as well as a skeptic on the value of the AI stuff. That approach would be materially changing the character of an existing output that users rely on, and that's probably not appropriate and would result in watching users drop out. This approach deliberately sets up a separate output to avoid that. This will either be attractive and grow, or it just won't, and it just dies. This approach is not disruptive to existing outputs, nor asking for users or volunteer contributors relying on those outputs to be co-opted into putting work into an output that they do not want to contribute to. I do appreciate your sincere response, but you also somewhat missed my point. The whole effort could still happen, even if it doesn't become an official objective through the same existing mechanisms. We don't have a mechanism, other than the legal banhammer, to actually prevent somebody from working on something they're interested in. I only think that it would be better for the project to not additionally promote a technology that, at least in its current form, is deeply problematic in a number of ways that is getting difficult to keep count of by making something so close to one of the project objectives. I am cognizant of the fact that this might just be me being an AI Luddite over the past few years. I've become allergic to AI getting attached to basically anything from phones to floating data centers in the sky. It has often been a good indicator of things being enshittified. I'm not on the council, my voice won't matter here in the end, so feel free to feed my feedback into DevNel Shredder, but it didn't feel right to say nothing when I am seriously concerned about the increasing amount of AI Kool-Aid consumption. First, I don't reach for the Luddite language when talking about the concerns. We are technologists talking about the harms being done in the productization of a technology. This here just talks about how it's basically been adopted into every industry, it's destroying jobs and all of this good stuff you've probably heard a million times before. Additions get access to a self-governing workgroup structure, and this structure probably makes the most sense out of the existing governance available, assuming it catches and finds its community. Ultimately, that is the core thing, right? If nobody wants to work on this, it's not gonna go anywhere. I think the idea that all additions have to be promoted in a specific way is a bit of a process mirage. Additions need to be promoted in an effective way, and it appears that Council ultimately has authority on how to promote additions via website properties. It shouldn't be concluded that this will be promoted in the same way as Workstation and KDE Plasma additions, but that's a discussion to be had. What does effective promotion for this output look like considering the state of the technology? How do we carve out the effective promotion that articles a call to action to participate towards an ethical future for this technology? And on that note, I've already had some discussions about needing a dedicated communication channel separate from Fedora magazine and the community blog where we are effectively communicating about the AI goings-on in the context of the Fedora project. Things slowed down for a little bit, people took a bit of a break and then came back to it, and now we have this response to the original comment from Jeff. I agree that we should use more data in our decision-making process, however, this should apply consistently to both positions, otherwise we risk holding different arguments to different standards. As I remarked on my previous reply, this is mixing two different things. Please let's avoid the package deal fallacy here. We can provide an AI developer desktop without making this a Fedora objective. We already do this for multiple things, e.g. Fedora Plasma Desktop is widely used, but as far as I know, it is not a Fedora objective to provide/support a Fedora KDE spin to users and developers. Not sure if this is your intention, but this reads as prioritizing relevance and adoption over ethical considerations. If you want the uncomfortable truth there, his position as Fedora project leader is in part focusing more on that. Since Fedora is a community-driven project rather than a corporation, it seems like an appropriate space to bring in those ethical and philosophical aspects. Absolutely, and they have been discussed many times in the thread. And regarding the last bit of the I'm not concerned about reputational damage, I've spent some time thinking about this paragraph, and I'm struggling with it. As Fedora project leader, expressing no concern about potential reputational impact could be interpreted as dismissing an issue that some contributors clearly care about. Even if the change is non-disruptive in a technical sense, it can still influence how the project is perceived and what it signals about Fedora's priorities. I think that concern deserves more consideration. And Jeff wanted to respond directly to that. I did warn everyone on my first official day standing on stage at Flock last year that there were hard conversations coming. AI is going to be several of those hard conversations. I wonder what else he's got in store. Here is why I'm not currently concerned about reputation damage in May 2026. Last month, the Linux kernel development community adopted an AI code generation policy that explicitly allows for the use of AI code generation. We've seen this in various other videos. Sash 11 has been using this quite actively. It compares well with the text of the Fedora policy, though they may have more details in what should be in the assisted by tag to help with data collecting about which models are being used. As a project, we'll probably want to learn from their policy so we can do our own data collection concerning model use as we start seeing assisted by tag use in our project contributions. Not saying, oh, mass data collection, but doing data collection based on the commits that are being made, understanding how people are doing things, understanding where work is coming from. Let me paint a picture for you of the future, what I see 2028 looking like. I'm looking at a future where it's conceivable that the majority of commits into the Linux kernel upstream will have AI assisted by tags in a couple of years. It's very possible. It's very possible. There are some people out there who think we'll hit that mark much sooner than that, but I'm thinking at 2 years, and where the Linux kernel goes, so does the bulk of the critical path ecosystem that makes the OS work. Yes, sure, there will be some projects where AI is not allowed, but I fully expect the bulk of the critical path components we build an operating system from will have AI-assisted code in it, and assisted development will be normalized as an open source Linux ecosystem development activity upstream of this project. That's a future I know a lot of people are not very happy about. But with all the young developers who are just using AI code and happily using this tooling, as they get more involved in open source, I don't see how that doesn't happen. So what is actually achievable in the future? I think Fedora needs to be in the conversation about what exactly AI-assisted development looks like broadly for the entire Linux development ecosystem. We need to be pushing towards better, more ethical model use by offering a developer environment that, as a long-term objective, includes making it easy to work with local models. We need to help the local models compete with the large centralized models for developer workloads. Will small, more open models be able to compete? I don't know, but this space is under active development, and as the big models seem to be hitting the laws of diminishing returns now, maybe there's a chance for the smaller models to catch up. The people that probably have the best idea about that are working in the AI space right now, and I need to build a bridge for them. This objective is one of those possible bridges. I'd like to not burn it before we build it. I'm not dismissing the concerns. If I'm doing anything, I'm disagreeing about what to do with those feelings. I don't think we can ignore the technology or wish it away. We may be able to address some of the concerns via government legislation, which only really applies if all governments do it, which they're definitely not. But I think as technologists, it's incumbent on us to provide a version of this non-deterministic technology that is better in the ways we care about, so that our version is what open source developers choose to use when they choose to do assisted development. That may mean getting our hands a little dirty at the start, so we can build the bridge into the segment of the open source community that sees value in the technology. This bridge should allow us to make incremental progress towards an achievable, ethical future. We do so knowing there is a gap between what is achievable and what is best seen from where we stand right now. The gap may be too wide for some, and if you're in that group, all I ask is you to give us the space to walk towards what is achievable. By doing so, we might see the gap close because each step changes our vantage point. Now, this discussion did result in this package of basically saying they're gonna step away from the project, at least temporarily. This is a big and tough discussion, and Fedora is not the only one having it. A similar discussion is also happening over in KDE as well, where they don't really have a proper policy on what to do. They have some general guidelines, and it's like, oh, well, if you do it, then you should say you're using it, but nothing clearly laid out, and this is something they're gonna have to deal with as well. Whilst the discourse won't be ending anytime soon, in the Fedora thread there was mention of a Fedora council meeting where they did discuss this matter. This does seem like it is going ahead, at least for now. Again, if they don't have enough people working on it, it can't really go anywhere, but at least with the people who are involved, they do want to make it happen. Or at the very least, they did. This has been getting quite a bit of pushback following articles from LWN and various other outlets, and now we have this, changing my vote to -1. I fear the feedback that was unfortunately received after the initial vote indicates the Fedora community is not supportive of this initiative as is. As one of the elected representatives, I feel I need to listen to that feedback and try to better understand it before I can approve this with a clear conscience. My original assumption was that this proposal being only additive in nature would not be controversial. I now see that I was wrong about that. I will reread the feedback and work with the relevant parties to help reshape the proposal so it has the community's support if possible. Also, if we go over to the ticket over here, Jay Flory is also changing his vote over to -1, and as we can see, Churchyard also -1 as well. This in and of itself created some drama because now it seems like, oh, you supported it, but now you're immediately turning against it because people said they didn't like it. So what is your actual opinion? Where do you actually stand? He said the feedback tipped the scale, but most people are not going to be reading the entire thread, so it's easy to come to the wrong assumption here. There is still quite a lot of discourse to be had and quite a lot of discourse in this thread. A lot of it is sort of rehashing the exact same topics over and over and over again, which is what tends to happen in any of these long sort of forum discussions. Since I planned this video, another 30 comments were made, so I don't expect this to die down anytime soon. I don't know where it's ultimately going to go, but if anyone is going to have the discussion, Fedora seems to be the place. They are always the place making the controversial changes. They are always the place doing things way before anyone else. I will be keeping an eye on this to see where it goes. But what do you think, and where do you think this discourse is going to go? Where do you stand on the AI topic? Are you for it? Are you against it? Do you understand where Jeff is coming from, wanting Fedora to be involved in the discussion? Or do you think things should be pulled back and just watch it play out and just see where it goes? I would love to know. I don't have an answer for you. I think everybody is making really compelling arguments. Anyway, if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. Looking at how many clips I have here, I'm assuming this was a long video, so thanks for watching to the end.